All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first holiday version of the Empire at War Expanded Con, which was a joke name at first, but we've just kind of stuck with that now. So I am Corey, but I'm not the only one who works on the mod, but you only hear from me,
Tritone.
so that's what these streams are for, to let you hear from everyone else on the team. They're all very shy, though, so it's probably still going to be mostly me talking and taking a look at what they've been doing for the last little while as well. So here, the first thing you're seeing are a bunch of Corellian ships. There are something like 100 plus, 120 plus assets to see today, more of those mission intros, that Rhino, Leo, and Nemesis has been helping with those as well. Anyone I'm forgetting in that? You guys want to talk about that first one?
I mean, I technically did one of the maps, kind of.
Right.
Not
Some
really.
The main legwork is Joel.
Definitely, yeah.
What?
So yeah,
Missions
there's
is-
Start everybody.
there's a lot of upcoming missions in Fall of the Republic, especially in the 0.3 version. Nothing in Thrawn's Revenge yet. The goal right now is to work on Fall of the Republic first, and hopefully have some in Revan's Revenge on launch, though those haven't quite come yet. So we'll see how far that goes, but there's, 5 or 6 other cutscenes like that that will be showing throughout the stream today. I've already uploaded that first one to Mod Database on the Fall of the Republic page. If you look in the description or in the pinned comment, Mod of the Year is also going on Mod Database right now. So this is all just going to be a telethon to get you all to go over to that link, that pinned link, and click on the vote button next to Thrawn's Revenge and Fall of the Republic. No other mods, don't do it. They don't love you like we do. Just don't vote for, or vote for them, whatever.
I mean, you could vote for Expanding Fronts since Jorah
Yeah.
works on that.
Jordan's not here
But it's
yet.
a
We don't have to
different
say that yet.
Oh, and I hope everyone's ready to watch lots of models spinning around quietly
Yeah.
against a grey background.
That's going to be most of today, with a few other videos thrown in as well. But a lot of the Corellian stuff will be showing up in kind of independent forces versions in 0.3. So I think right now we're looking at the 2 proficient variants, the Strident and the Starbolt. I think that's what this one is, the Starbolt
and
carrier.
you put up the light cruiser at the start as well.
Yeah, so there's 5 or 6 that we've talked about it a bit, where all the maps are being redone, and that'll come up later, all the progressive maps especially. And that involves putting all of the future factions onto the maps, that we don't have to keep redoing the maps every version where we add a faction, which means we need a little bit of content to put on those planets so that it's not all Star Destroyers. My voice is going to die immediately, apparently. But,
Yeah, and then the art debate. Why don't we just make all of them
Yeah.
for all of the factions?
Oh, this isn't even close to all of them.
Many of them for most of the factions.
So, anyone present who sees any of their work on screen right now, if you have anything you'd like to throw in, any funny stories about times you've spent with the models or the textures. If not, then we don't have to. No pressure.
Copying your CR90 skin was just really annoying because it's beige, and that's annoying.
What's wrong with beige?
It's beige.
Did you not have the substance file? Did you try to do that without the substance file?
I never have the substance files for anything.
Okay, well, you could have asked. I would have sent it. Well, everyone
So many
appreciates the
hours
extra
wasted.
work going in. I do tend to have them.
That would be too easy.
Well, one of the things that we
Super
try to
cheating.
do with all of the assets is keep a consistent style with the same manufacturer. So I think Nolan got into an argument when the Strident model was posted untextured a few days ago on Mod Database as well, where the Mod of the Year 2022 competition is going
You
on.
say this like I'm the contributing person instead of the person who was like on the team's side.
Yeah, I mean, arguments involve 2 people.
How
How would you like me to frame it? Nolan helpfully informed one of our nice fans about how the the designs work.
Isn't
That usually how it goes?
Sounded
Someone
like
says
you've
something
never
wrong
done
and
that specifically with mod concept art either.
I'm not judging I'm not judging it. I've argued with many people on the Discord, in the comments here, but one person I haven't argued with is Soontir Fell 181 of the 181st with the $20 donation saying, "Thank you all for your all's great work. These look amazing."
This is Nolan kindly informing you you're wrong.
Nolan helpfully sought out
Well
and
judged.
corrected. You shouldn't. Someone had to do it. You were the only one brave enough to. But yeah, so if you see it's partially getting a similar style within a faction, but it's more like if Incom makes something, we use the same material set. If that's probably the worst example because they have the most random crap. But if there's a KDY ship, then all the KDY ships will have, within the same period that they were made, will have a similar base texture style, which makes it faster for us to make them because Substance Painter is a fantastic tool that lets you take like these basic hull plating styles and apply them pretty easily rather than hand drawing everything like we had to do 10 years ago back in my day. And that's part of why we're able to make as much as we do as fast as we do. But I guess for the ships we're showing, so the Proficient is this one right now. This is the carrier version, then the kind of one without the slopes that, I don't know what to call it. Combat version? What ship type should we call
Combat
it?
with the armor, and then probably a tender without the armor. Because I think that was his intention there.
Yeah, so we have those. We have the much later era Strident. I wouldn't necessarily expect the Strident to show up in this release. The Proficients definitely will. The Starbolt probably as well. And then the Proficient, or the Strident would probably come when we get to the point where it'd be playable for someone. We don't want to throw it all up
we can't
there
give
at
the
once.
submodders all of the assets to start with.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I don't know the current historical starts really covering it doesn't help either.
Also, thank you, Alexander. Very appreciated. Well, one of the things with the kind of placeholder factions is they probably won't be the most accurate right off the start, and then the stream died. Can you all hear me at least? Okay. There we go.
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Lost it for
Yeah.
a second.
Okay.
You went quiet for a minute.
Discord appears to be a bit fuzzy today.
Well,
Nothing
Dana's
we can really do
watching
about that.
Dana's watching a Hallmark movie, so I've got to compete for internet with the same plot line. But yeah, so there'll be definitely some stuff that is a little bit era fudged, and especially in the unknown regions, some stuff that wouldn't be on the planet at all. So you'll probably see some more Imperial Warlord forces in the unknown regions than you would eventually. But Corellians coming to a Star Wars galaxy near you. And we can keep talking about them if we want, but I'm going to change the view over to the tech trees that Rhino's been working on the last 2
Considering
days.
those are mostly in-game stuff, I guess we can't keep talking about Corellians.
Yeah, so
Probably
yeah,
wouldn't.
Well, we don't have a Corellian faction to have a tech tree for.
Yeah.
So.
I wouldn't expect NR to really have access to anything there. It's like asking for every Imperial faction to have access to every Imperial thing. It's not generally the case.
The New Republic
So-
does have the Proficient in Ascendancy, so once I get that model in there, then that'd be a thing. But Rhino, do you want to talk about a bit of what you did here?
Yeah, so I was going through the debug log, trying to fix any errors, and I saw the tech tree errors, and I thought, I'm just gonna make them actually useful. And yeah, this is what I've come up with. And the main idea was to get a core roster of stuff that's buildable for the faction. There are some edge cases and some exceptions, like NR, you get like the researchers, those are shown. Zinj, I think, gets a few things because they're core to his. But it's just meant to be a nice thing for people to see and just to know what the faction can build.
So what you're saying is you did the Thanos move and said, fine, I do it myself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Plus, now, anybody who asks what's the roster for the faction, you just have to click on the tech tree.
Yeah.
Load to GC is the faction, click on their tech tree, there's the roster. You can Much like in vanilla, you can mouse over any of the icons and it'll give you the full tooltip. So hopefully this will be helpful for everyone.
I mean, who won't know where this is? So, like,
They look great, Rhino.
Yes, they're definitely a huge improvement.
Yeah.
They look really good.
There's a few things we need to clean up, but nothing that
Yeah.
is rhinos and or felt. Different
Yeah,
icon
from
layerings
the-
display differently on different UI elements, so
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Some of them look a bit wonky.
It has involved several arguments about the definition of core roster. So some of it may change a little bit as we try to figure out anything else we want to represent on them, but should definitely help.
yeah. Like, frankly, there is not a perfect way to represent all the EaWX stuff at all in the base tech tree things. So
Yeah, if it
Never
let
gonna
us
be
add
perfect.
tabs, it'd be nice, but unfortunately, UI stuff is one of the least moddable Empire at War elements, because like, we can do what we want largely on these pages, but we can't add the pages in the same way that we can't add whole new UI elements on the main HUD, which is why we have everything done in the news feed, basically. All the text trying to turn the game into like a DOS adventure game. Eventually, we're going to get rid of all the planet rendering, and it'll just be a readout of what's going on in the galaxy, and then you type in the thing you want to do next. And that'll really help gameplay, because we can do whatever we want there. Oh shit, you can't type in the game either. Oh no, never mind.
Sorry, we can't. I don't know, unless we can read from the
Fuck.
console.
No, better
Console.
idea. Forget that. We only need 26 build bar icons. And then you just, you press the buttons you want, and you type that way.
Oh, cool. So we have
we need a space and a
EaWX
backspace also.
And we
text
can,
adventure.
yeah, we can just make that a new build bar tab to enter text that way. Convert it to a string in the framework somewhere, and then it outputs the message, and we can do something with that.
This just seems
Let's
like
get
a
the other-
compliment. Oh, god.
I was going to say, let's get the other game modes we're definitely not planning done first.
You don't want to have a bespoke blackjack mode in the news feed?
I feel like this is just a complicated way of saying that all our jobs are now outsourced to AI.
Yeah, I've been in Chat GPT doing all the mechanic planning for the last week.
Roy just wants to play Berserk in the middle of a GC.
Well, I figured people needed to hear how most of the features get started in the mod, and it's basically this conversation. So
You're not
more
too
screaming.
far off.
It
No,
just
no,
get
the
choked
screaming
into
happens
reality.
afterwards.
yeah, there's nothing
There
on the
are a
screen that
few-
you can.
New Unity previews in this, but they're all pretty buried. So
Yeah, if anyone
If
finds
if you
them in the
don't know
chat,
the
we'll give
rosters
them
by
a-
art, you're probably not going to notice.
Yeah, if anyone gets it in chat, then we'll give you a prize. But
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing. I do see some people saying, "What about Dark Empire?" So that's what the text saying "Go look in guides" is for. Because yeah, I'm not going to do that. Like, if you look at the CSA, it's got the ship market, and that just says "Go look in the guides." I'm not going to fit everything in there.
some of the
So-
progression stuff will probably end up having to go on there, but that'll be a later
Yeah.
thing to figure out.
This will be the next core roster discussion.
It's like I probably could fit in every unit, but then there'd be like really tiny icons, and obviously that's not good for people who probably can't see very well and accessibility things. So
But that is, I think we've been through all the tech trees. I think they've all
They've
cycled
been
through.
looping.
Okay. I think I put it on for like 8 seconds each. But that brings us to, I put all of the Fall of the Republic content, or Fall of the Republic specific content to like the CIS and the Republic, plus a few other things that you can see right now, into this one preview together. So right now, Sky, we're looking at some of your other infantry work that you've been doing pretty much non-stop since the last since the last EaWX con.
Yeah, so infantry, I don't know, I made 90% of these. I just sort of made them in an afternoon or something.
Stop trying to
There's
undermine
not really
the
much to
whole
say. I
infantry is
remade-
hard thing.
Well, I don't really know. Like the Mandalorians, I remade them like a week after I initially made them because I didn't like how they looked. So just all of them. The Security Trooper I made because of a different model that's going to show up later, probably. This is just a texture of Oserital because Oserital made models. We needed to texture them, so that's just how it happens. I don't have a plan for making stuff. It just happens.
Yeah, so we got a bunch of clones out of that. We got a bunch of stuff for the Hutts when they come to Fall of the Republic, because we've mentioned before that the Shadow Collective stuff is going to be associated with the Hutts. That's one of the places that Maul and Savage Opress will come in. What a stupid fucking name. But
they're all like that. The entire family's names in TCW are all like that.
They probably have another brother named like Evil McBad Guy. He's Scottish.
Now people can't say that we don't have every clone. I'm pretty sure we have every clone now.
I guess, yeah, that's
probably
very
talk
close
about
to
clones
every
now.
No, there's definitely a lot more to do.
Not
There's
enough.
a lot more to do.
We
And
still
another
need
cute little probe.
I'm missing the umbrella guys.
Philoraptor,
yeah.
any fun stories about the probe?
A fun story. I can't. Oh no, I can see it now because I'm slightly delayed. I think.
I might be able to do something about that. Hold on.
But yeah, that probe is for one of the missions that Leo has been doing. Because I noticed that my Corellian probe droid showed up there, so I thought, okay, that's a bit anachronistic. So I just offered I could do this instead, and yeah, so we ended up with the CIS probe droid instead.
I think I still have to change this one. Good that you remind me. Oops.
I have so for you guys in the chat, I have started streaming to Discord as well, so it won't have the delay. I use my virtual cam.
All right.
So you can actually see as it's happening. But right now you're seeing some of these blue and gray ships. That's Sabayoth Squadron, pronounced as Joris Sabayoth, which I got made fun of. You can call them Saboth if you want. I don't know. Someone else say it.
Sabayoth. Saboth sounds weird.
Sabayoth?
I'm pretty sure that's how I was saying it in the video, and I still got people making fun of me. What's wrong with this?
Does the name not get said in the game where these show up?
I don't fucking play Star Wars games.
It's Viscount, not Viscount.
God, that's the worst one, because every American, not every American, the ones that don't comment don't say it, so it's not all of you, but it's always Americans who comment it when I say Viscount, and they're like, actually, it's a Viscount? It's like, no, it's not. That's just for you.
To be fair, to be fair, last time I said it, everyone just poo-pooed on me for saying Viscount.
So
I don't wanna
the
hear.
moral of the story is if you're American, don't comment on Corey's videos.
English is dumb.
Angry comments are the best because it's free interaction from people who don't want to help me. Like the guy who comments on basically every video about how Ascendancy is a conspiracy, it's actually dead, and whatever else he says. Like all doing
he straight calls you a liar whenever you respond.
It's so fucking weird. He's the only one that I let
Corey
myself
died for a
take
second.
correction
there
out
he
of.
is.
Oh. Well,
Yeah,
sometimes I'll come in and out, I guess.
I like how we've just casually shown off like dozens of models in the last.
We're slowly
3
talking
minutes.
about them. So a lot of the infantry, there's the clones that we've shown there. Oh, it didn't. That one doesn't loop apparently. It was supposed to loop. There we go. It's coming back through again. So a lot of the infantry models that there's like the clones and some of the Jedi. Those are going to be part of new command staff mechanic, or not new mechanics overall, but new elements of the command staff mechanic, where you'll now be able to pick your active Jedi heroes as we spread those out some more. There's also clone commandos, clone commanders, ground commanders. So basically all of your heroes except for your economic hero, Obi-Wan and Anakin, as the Republic, are part of those mechanics now.
And I think the most important question is, where's Post Vizsla?
He's the character in Rebels, but this is the Procurator. This is not the Maelstrom. Maelstrom will come later, but this is the Procurator battle cruiser.
This specific one is basically a background art piece blur that takes out a Lucre Hulk. That was worked with and Terrible worked with, and then sky textured.
It looks gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the various commanders, and I think some of the commandos are in this render as well. Yeah, so if you don't want Delta Squad as being your sole commando force, if you'd rather have the much more boring Omega Squad, or
Porto also, because I think he is in public. We have a lot of clone options.
Yeah. One of the other things that I did, so we'll probably talk about this a little bit more with some other stuff. So the button that you normally use right now to turn on Cruel AI, I have replaced that with an options button that opens a new build tab. And on that build tab, that is now where you enable Cruel AI. You can also now disable Cruel AI, and there will be a standalone video about some of this. So if you press it and you're like, I don't want this in my life anymore, you can turn off Cruel AI. And that's also where there's going to be some other gameplay options or aesthetic options. For example, in Fall of the Republic, if you want to use the 501st clones as your default trooper skin, you can cycle through all of the Clone Legion skins from that menu, and then when you bring a clone into battle, it'll use that as the default rather than the plain white one. And right now, that's worked into the tier system. So in the future, it'll just turn into the base skin and it gets overwritten by any other commander. Right now, if you choose Obi-Wan's, for example, that will still override anyone else. In the future, that won't be the case.
Procurator, stat-wise, since that's come up in comics, 2,500 meters, effectively the same stat scaling as the Praetor 1 and the TEG have at 4 and 3-ish, respectively. So a bit newer and bigger than an Invincible, so more powerful there. A beefier, slightly beefier Tector power weight thing is how I'm going to describe that. We haven't really decided availability for it at the moment. It might just be starting forces. It might just be Era 1 or maybe Era 2 build. We don't know.
Yeah,
and
generally
that could easily change. Say if we get a Maelstrom in at some points, that might replace it directly at the appropriate checkpoint.
Generally, with any future content for the CIS and Republic, it'll be much more niche in how it's available. It'll either be like research stuff that's replacing something else, mission rewards, one-off things from other rewards. So we don't want to overly bloat the rosters with things that fill too many roles, because we do want to keep distinct gameplay for each of the factions. And with some of these larger ships like the Procurator, Maelstrom, we don't want the game to turn into battlecruiser spam, which are essentially SSDs for the era. So there will be more limitations on each one as more get added.
Yeah, and like the concern for the Procurator and Maelstrom thing especially is that they end up being an ISD weight thing, and we don't really want that to be a direct Republic access option in most of the GCs for FOTR.
So here are all the little CIS happy guys.
Not quite as much of them done yet, but more 0.4 for the CIS Organic Infantry, and a good chunk of the clones probably end up in 0.4 also for some of the more niche variants.
I think we've been through all of these twice now. Yes.
Yeah, we're starting on the third loop. A good chunk of the Mandalorians are also kind of a little mini government thing for CIS. If you have Mandalore in the GC, you can back Protectors or back Deathwatch, and then you get the heroes set from either.
Yeah, so one of the most common questions, since Mandalore does have influence units even in the current release in Fall of the Republic, is, oh, where's Mandalore? Mandalore will be on the progressive maps when they're remade there. But let's move on to the second of our mission intro cinematics. And then we will get to some game mode stuff with Ranger and maybe take a few of the questions from the chat that are unrelated to things that have been shown so far. So the rest of us will be back in a second. Watch the thing. All right. There was the second one. Joel, you or Leo want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, that's the basic idea is comes from like 5 lines of some source book, might even be Essential Guide to Warfare or Essential Atlas. And it's just about a clone going mad during the Operation Dirge's Lance campaign. And since this GC needed a few story missions, I thought this might work well for one. And initially, it had an entire part where you also fought and tried to capture the clone, but a few persons, Rhino, pointed out that this wasn't fun and like the way it was set up, so I just got lazy and cut it all together into one long animation. And now you just have this. And yes, the references were fairly obvious. I took all the names from the cast of the movie Interstellar because when I made the mission, I watched the movie a day prior and was like, these are the only names I can think of. I'm fairly uncreative, I have to say at this point.
Trust me, naming things, that's how that works.
Yes, uncreative, he says. Comes together, puts an entire story, cutscenes, series together from a few paragraphs in a source book. Yes, uncreative.
Snippets from source book and notes in a blog for this one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nolan. Notes in a blog. I mean, that makes all the difference.
Rich source material.
It's the Battlefields of the Clone Wars part of the Essential Guide to Warfare author's cut, if I recall.
The hardest part of any creative process is figuring out what the hell to name things.
I do want to additionally for that one thank Paramount Pictures for not suing us for the name usage.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is Star Wars names generally suck. Like, either they are way too creative or not creative at all.
Are you saying that Comerc is not a good name?
Are you saying that Darth Undeadu is not a good name?
Darth Undead Dude?
Fash. Planet Bafash.
Darth Maul. Grievous.
They should have just made one of those characters be one of the good guys and just trip people up.
Yeah. I'm 100% behind this.
Well, they did that with Garmbel Iblis.
Yeah, but that name is a bit more subtle.
What? Yeah, okay.
Subtle in Star Wars? This can't be true.
Well, George Lucas didn't write that part.
Okay. Now it can be true.
Yeah. With the ARFs on screen that were just on screen, we mostly just use them at the moment for vehicle drivers. It's been showed off before, but it hasn't really come up in the stream. Just they're a good phase neutral option to operate things like ATRTs and ISPs that aren't tied to that sort of system.
Well, those are the updated Legion skins, right? Not the ones currently in game.
Those are. I don't think Public doesn't have the placeholder ones I did anyways to recollection.
Oh,
so
never mind then.
It just
but
has
these are newer showed off things.
Yes. These are Sky actually doing skins for it instead of Nolan taking 2 minutes to put some basic colors on them all.
Now we have these ones that I will actually switch over to now.
Marines are their own unit type and will be a mission reward, as well as participating in a good chunk of missions because they're a nice infantry unit.
What do you mean? No, these are Kiadimundi's only squad. No, he has them.
I'm going to point out that Kiadimundi has non-Marine troops on ROTS in like the scenes with them. You just need to look in the background.
I choose to ignore it, and that's why it's not true.
When are we getting the Kiadimundi skin where he is wearing the outfit?
I would pay
you
for
mean
it.
the Kenobi skin where he's wearing clone armor, like the original Clone Wars?
He has that in both. They carried that over.
It's a little bit different, but it's the same concept. It gets chewed on in one of the books also, where he starts out in like the full clone garb, but then goes to the cut down version.
Yeah, he has it in like Brotherhood mentions it too,
and never puts it back on.
Well, by the time of Revenge of the Sith, it was like a little cliche. Everyone around him was wearing it, so
back to the robes. Yeah, with the Marines too, it's like okay, we see 501st use Marine types, we see 187th use Marine types, we see Star Corps use Marines. So it's a troop type. Wikipedia's page is not particularly the best, but a lot of the sourcebook stuff isn't the cleanest for them, so I don't really blame it.
It's okay. We have Nolan to replace Wikipedia for us.
Hey, this one's Jord relevant too.
The game modes.
Something exciting is happening. All right, Ranger, you want to talk a bit about these little guys?
Oh, right, yeah. So, in the past, the Supremacy game mode was only New Republic and Empire in Thrawn's Revenge. That's now all the factions currently playable, apart from the Hapes, are currently playable, assuming there's no major bugs that appear in testing.
When has that ever happened?
There's been a few already, but they've been fixed so far. But this is a game mode where you start out with a SSD as your starbase, and as you tech up, the SSD becomes more and more repaired, and by Tech 5, you've got Devastator at full strength, and you're dropping units that groups of ships, so you end up with large-scale battles like these screenshots are showing, where you go way over the normal pop cap and have multiple frigates, multiple battle cruisers, multiple star destroyers in play.
And there's another mode that Phil is actually working on that I was going to ask him about if he's here. He is not, so that's all I'm going to say about it. But it's mostly just for Revan's Revenge.
To answer the question in chat real quick, the Hapens will use an executor like every other faction for balance purposes.
Oh yeah, just for the balance and the sake of my own sanity, everyone uses the same Star Destroyer for the station. In TR, it's the Executor. In Thrawn's Revenge, it is the Mandator.
Call it a maximalist scale capture.
I mean, in the world, there's enough Star Destroyers going around, people are finding them behind their couch.
And we also do have survival mode coming back, which we've shown a fair bit here in the, I think it was in the prior anniversary one, plus I've done a few streams of that. That is still not in Thrawn's Revenge just yet. Hopefully we'll have the New Republic and Imperial version set up for the 0.3 release, but it'll definitely be in Fall of the Republic, and that'll be a game mode that we also iterate over a little bit as we go in some of the other updates, because there will be more updates. Right.
There are so many updates.
Everything that is done must be redone. We have a 3-year shelf life on all content.
Please,
unless you're Ozoritzla, in which case it might be 3 days.
Yeah. So there's gonna be some of the upcoming Hapen content in the stream, and I have to apologize to Oz in advance because he did the renders for them, then he changed some of them and did new renders, and I think I got the correct ones for most of them, but there may be 1 or 2 of them that I still am like a version behind on. But hopefully no one will notice except for him. I did my best.
Well, they might make a new one before that even comes out, wouldn't they?
It's almost guaranteed. There was some more updates to one of them this morning, so I think that's what it was. But I need to go back to studio mode. So we have talked a little bit about some of the upcoming map changes. I did a more in-depth video about that we're going to put up right now, and then we'll be back to talk about some huts and some Revan's Revenge. So don't touch that dial. The Galactic map is a crucial part of Empire at War, and in Empire at War Expanded mods, the progressive Galactic maps, which cover the entire time period of the mods, are probably the most iconic. One of the biggest elements being done in the current 0.3 release cycle is redoing every single era progressive map for both mods, so if you're crazy about cartography, then today's video is for you. We've nearly finished going through the Thrawn's Revenge setups, which are what we're going to be talking about primarily today, and then following that we'll be doing the same with Fall of the Republic. In Thrawn's Revenge's prior versions, progressive maps have included a small and medium version of the full galaxy, which includes everything, and of the known galaxy, which leaves out the unknown regions. This has now been expanded to include a large map size for both versions, with planet counts more standardized between them. The small known galaxy map is 90 planets, medium is 120, and large is 160, with the full galaxy map being 10 planets larger than the corresponding known galaxy map size, so 100, 130, and 170, though the planets are uniquely selected for each, rather than just being the known galaxy layout plus 10 more or something. The biggest change in how we've set this up is that not only does your starting year determine who owns which planet like in earlier versions, the maps are actually entirely different depending on which year you started. In prior versions, it's been difficult because we've had to give equal weighting to planets relevant in the first era as to those relevant in the 7th, despite the fact that nobody really cares about planets like Endor once you get to the Dark Empire period, for example. Now, the galaxies are built with a focus on their starting era and some particularly important planets from later years, so progression will still make sense. This all means that between 6 different map selections with the small, medium, and large versions of both, and 7 different era selections, there are 42 distinct progressive map choices in Thrawn's Revenge. Implementing these, despite having a handy map editor tool, has been my private hell. When it comes to factions, there were 2 main goals with these new map changes. For one, we wanted to make sure we had the setup done for all future playable factions, so rather than redesigning the whole map when a new faction gets added, they'll be able to slot right in because we've already factored in their territory. This means the unknown regions in Hutt space in particular have received a lot of attention. In the short term, these will be present as either non-playable factions or placeholder independent forces, set up with whichever content we have done that's most appropriate. But over the next couple releases, they'll be fully fleshed out into their intended factions. So in the unknown regions, for example, right now it's largely just the Empire of the Hand and very little else, especially in the public builds. But we've already got initial work moving on the proper Ascendancy, Siruvi, and Killik, which will have their first content in 0.3. This will make it a little bit easier to play as factions that border on some of those emptier planets, but that will get adjusted over time. Secondly, we want to avoid the issue which later eras currently have in 3.2, where starting in a later year will lose some fun because it's one-sided in favor of the New Republic. We obviously want to reflect the New Republic's progression, but we have tried to plan them out so that the focus is on conflict zones, and on making as many factions viable and on an even footing as possible, so it's more fun to play both as and against everyone. We particularly want to make sure that no faction starts off being able to basically just win right away. To that end, there has also been a change in how we handle starting forces more generally, which are still in progress, so don't take what you're seeing on the maps here too seriously, especially when looking at the later era stuff since a lot of the early era units are still what's used there. Previously, there's tended to be a large number of units on the maps to start with, and lower levels of star bases or ground infrastructure. Now we're flipping that, so planets will start with smaller fleets but generally closer to their max starbase level and other infrastructure. This should have a few positive effects. For more experienced players, it should help prevent the opportunity for early blitzing to win the game off of starting forces. For newer players, especially on lower difficulties, it'll help slow down or defend against early AI attacks, which can sometimes feel overwhelming when the bulk of the enemy starting forces attack you if you haven't properly consolidated your own forces. It should also mean your early economy is able to focus on building the ships that you want to build and customizing your fleet loadouts over relying on whichever stacks you've been given and then spending most of your money on star bases. Most of these changes will likely only affect the first 10 to 20 weeks of the game, but we still think they're a much healthier direction to move in. There are some other map changes coming in 0.3 and 0.4, both with some story content, with regional maps being added, and with some of the historicals, but we'll talk about those a bit more on their own later. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe here or check out the Discord linked in the description for more news on EaWX as it happens. Alright, there we go. So that should hopefully give you an idea of what maps will look like in the next little while. They have been, they've been fun to work on.
Don't lie, you love maps. You love painting maps.
I love the planning. The planning is fun. The
implementation,
working on all the trade routes and doing it 42 times so far before even getting to follow the Republic. That's difficult. It's tedious. Not difficult.
At least Follow the Republic only has 6, right?
9.
Nine isn't too bad.
How much sanity has been lost, Rory?
What's that, Ranger?
How much sanity has been lost?
Just from that, or over the last 16 years?
Either or.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to ask me that, I'd say I was never sane.
So, the next faction that is likely to be playable in basically every mod, other than, I guess, if you're counting the first 3 Revenge factions, are the Hutts. They are always present, and they have a lot of ship types. So you'll notice that none of the ship types you're about to see, or that you've seen in the prior videos we've done, or the prior stream showing off the first half of their roster, none of those are like whatever random Black Sun stuff people think that a pirate faction should have. Let's have a ton of their own content. They're their own people. Different stuff in most eras, but most of these, I think, have all of them been done by you, Sky? All that stuff, except for the ground stuff, that's mostly Philoraptor?
Yeah, most of them. There's like maybe one, the Cossack, which is not mine.
Right, that one was inertial for the initial model and texture. I'm not sure if the texture was redone by inertial or not. But if you want to talk a little bit about the space stuff, Sky, or Philo, if you want to talk about some of the ground stuff as it rotates through.
Yeah, so the Panther that just showed up, so the skiff with the gun below, that's probably not even gonna be hot. At least that loadout. Since there probably is gonna be another one later on in this collection that has 3 guns. Instead of the AW layout, it just has the one gun attached to the bottom. So I assume the 3-gun one will be the one that we'll use for the huts. And the 1 gun probably just for independent forces.
Use basically.
And I should say that if we go through this just once, it's 8 minutes of 10 to 15 second clips. So there's a lot of hut stuff that's going to be coming.
Yeah, we have gone through a couple ships which have been shown off in untextured forms last time. A couple ships that are new and a variety of ground options.
Yeah, a good chunk are either canon designs or canon names that we've applied other designs to. Luckily, huts have a very clear design language, so any gaps that have needed to be filled, Sky's been able to do that. And on ground, there's a ton of related stuff to work off of, too.
Yeah. Pretty much it's been like mostly designs that don't have a name that we had to apply a name for. And then the Cossack and the Derbula are names that didn't have a design that the mod has designed stuff for.
And some infantry as well.
Lancer also falls under that category, but it's a knockoff Lancer, so we kind of had to decide.
It's not the Lancer. It's the
I don't know why I brought up the Lancer. It's a
completely unrelated. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, completely different ship. I don't even know what you're referring to, actually, to say it's a completely different ship.
Clearly.
So yeah, once 0.3 is out, there will be a lot of pretty immediate movement to get the hut set up. So they will be definitely playable in 0.4. We're hoping to get some of the other factions potentially to that point in 0.4 as well. But that'll be the release that we do a little bit more on the Hapens too. Because we've kind of let them settle for this release. There have been some changes to some balancing for them, and I'll be doing a little bit more of that based on feedback we've received on them so far. And then 0.4 will be where we go back to the Hapens as well. So anything that starts with an H will be getting a lot more attention in 0.4.
Except Harsk.
Well, we don't know that. Like that seems like a good time to get rid of the rest of the Zero Command stuff set up.
Dangerous words.
Look, if we can't live up to Triple H, I don't know what we're even doing.
I forget I forget how much I like the huts coloring and their color schemes. The tans and the reds.
It's certainly a nice change of pace.
So on the map, Randomness Inc. is asking if there's a way to have the full galaxy still be available. You're not able to change both the era and the map. Like, you're not able to say, I want to start in Era 7, but using the Era 1 map. Like, the maps have been designed using the planets that are relevant to that era and to make a more balanced experience. There are plenty of maps where certain factions are more or less disadvantaged, but there's not the old Era 7 map where the Empire has like 6 planets in the north and the New Republic has the rest of the map. We're not putting that back in. We're not doing 700 different map variations for people who want a specific faction in a specific era to have a specific disadvantage. That's way too many
different
maps.
Maps with different planets per era and per size is already a lot of maps, as Corey said before.
If people want to make their own, feel free.
It's actually probably not that hard to copy it yourself if you want a specific version. But if you want all 700 versions, then that'll be a bit of effort.
Maybe I should just roll a few dozen FTGU starts and then just post the saves immediately.
All we can do is ask all the players to try different eras, try different factions in different eras, make it so that all this work that Corey and the team has done is worthwhile.
Absolutely not.
95% of people are just going to start as Era 1 largest map.
If you look at the way the maps are actually set up, there are still plenty of eras where the relative forces of the Empire, for example, are the same as what they were in Era 7 in the current maps. The difference is that it's not just the New Republic that controls the rest of the galaxy. So I tried to make it so that as many factions were as viable as possible, and no faction within reason had like the majority of the forces. The later you go, the New Republic is still obviously going to be more and more powerful or more and more concentrated, but it's not really fun if you start with 70% of the galaxy. You've basically won already. So a lot of those forces get shifted to the Hutts, which is, they're always around. They're always a considerable part of the galaxy, so they're very useful to have there. The later you go, the more kind of goes into the future Confederacy territory, which like around Corellia. Then you always have the CSA and the Hapens to take some of that away. And the unknown regions, the territory only changes so much, so that was also a bit easier to deal with. But that's kind of my thought process when setting all of those up. We haven't talked about From the Ground Up yet, but we probably won't be talking about that today. And I don't know that we'll be getting to too many changes for From the Ground Up in 0.3 overall. Because there's a lot of progressive map changes that are being prioritized, then some of the historicals, plus all of the story stuff that has been kind of shown off as we've gone here. So that's kind of where the focus has been. I think so. There's some Revan's Revenge ships that are in here. You can kind of tell what's what from the
first two
the texture.
Way back.
Yeah, the Azulus Azure. Is the Voracious that old as well?
No, it's pretty new. It's like end of New Sith War stuff.
Only 1,000 years old.
Yeah, it is well within the Core Saga dated realm.
But yeah, if you like sales, then do we have a faction for you?
For you.
So there's 5 or 6 of the Hutt units will be. Oh, I'll let that play through one more time. 5 or 6 of the Hutt units will be. So this is Revan's Revenge. Next one's Revan's Revenge. But 5 or 6 of the Hutt units will be in Fall of the Republic and Thrawn's Revenge in 0.3. That's how we'll be filling out some of the starting forces on those planets. And then in 0.4, that's when we'll have the full roster fleshed out, including government mechanics and all that fun stuff.
And yes, the sails are indeed rigid in Empire at War, though, in space, there isn't really enough wind resistance to make the sails ripple or anything anyway. So
Ether
they're probably weird glowing radiator things.
Solar winds.
I just assume they're aesthetic choices because the Hutts like to pretend they're being sunned on a desert world all the time.
If there was a faction to care about aesthetics, my brain says it would be Hutts.
Star Courier, will clarify because it's been asked like 5 times now, is just going to be a hero transport for relevant heroes, which is
Maul confirmed.
I guess Maul when he exists, although I don't think he actually uses a Star Courier at any point during his mod timeline, but a couple of the other Dark Acolytes and officers use them.
Yeah, I included that with this because Darth Maul's closest connection as a faction is the Hutts, and the Star Courier's closest connection that we're probably using is Darth Maul. So don't necessarily take their inclusion in any particular video as being like 100% indicative of what's going on with content, but Darksaber. Darksaber. That was a thing.
Darksaber exists. It's a giant lightsaber. Who knows what we'll do with it?
Yeah, that's actually going to be just a really high detail model for a lightsaber that we give all the huts in the mod. It's not going to be the space thing. So we don't know necessarily what the Darksaber will actually be able to do, whether it's going to be primarily just there as a narrative thing, or whether we'll be able to make it not explode like it did in Universe and be useful for some gameplay stuff. I feel like if people build the Darksaber and then try to use the Darksaber and then it just explodes and that's its entire gameplay purpose, like without that being just part of a mission, I feel like people would be upset with that, but we'd probably find it funny. Yeah.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Sadly, we can't work in Warhammer style jokes around things like that for factions.
Not without being sued by even more people, yeah. So actually, I think I'll stop the presses on this because we do have a render, not of the ground units, but of the space units at least, that will show everything mostly to scale. The fighters are not bigger than their capital ships, and it's a very big high-res image, so I need to do some resizing there. But this is the name of a good chunk of the ships you've seen there, not necessarily all of them, and some of the stuff that we had shown in the prior stream as well. But if you need a size comparison of what you're kind of looking at, this is that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of... So the Cossack is about 400 meters-ish.
Yes.
In the middle
Where's
there.
the ISD for scale?
The Karabos and Vontor are close to it.
A little shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But close is close.
Yeah.
So the huts have a fair few battle cruisers and a lot of smaller stuff as well. They're a little bit CSA-y in their size distribution. Not quite as extreme as the CSA is, but
there's a good amount of heavy frigates. They're low on pure destroyers, which is the CSA comparison. Which Corelli is also probably going to be in the same boat.
Yeah.
Which is nice, it gives the faction some differences rather than just ISD weight thing for everybody.
Yeah, so for the huts in both Fall of the Republic and Thrawn's Revenge, and probably even applicable in Revan's Revenge, though we haven't really discussed them yet, we're mostly focusing on the Republic, Mandos, and Sith. You start as kind of your standard hut cartels. They did have some of these ships and some other ships that were either actively being made or were reasonable to assume that they had sitting around in Butana Hutta, which is where they didn't let anyone in because that's where they kept all their nice little warships. And one of the Hutt government mechanics is basically remobilizing their military and becoming the Hutt Empire. They did this canonically after the Yuzon Vong War because people stopped leaving them alone and basically told them to go fuck themselves. So that'll be a thing that they can do at different points in the mod. So you don't necessarily have to wait until 30 ABY as the Hutts to get access to the remobilized Hutt Empire. That'll be a thing you're working towards as the faction through other means, or that the AI will be doing through other means as well, which makes them a bit more interesting as a militarized faction. They'll have other cartel-y stuff that they can do, but Empire War is fundamentally a game about fleet battles against fleet battles, so having a faction that is just, wouldn't it be cool if they didn't do military stuff? That doesn't really work with Empire War. That's something that people have asked us a bit before. We're not going to be trying to go that direction.
And, they are a space power with more territory than a good chunk of the other factions in the mod as well.
They were never fully demilitarized. They just weren't actively projecting their power that way.
And which ships go in which is not entirely decided, especially for some of the more mod specific stuff, but it'll also vary by mod as well when things have what might be a militarized ship in FOTR might be part of your starting roster in TR depending on what the era for it is.
Because, for example, the Cossack is a ship that was made under the Empire, in that period. I think it might be a little bit before, Nolan?
It's a bit vague, in the source book. So it'd be a good example of, say, one that you start with in TR, but one that you militarize to in FOTR.
Yeah. So
same for, say, the Dorbula, potentially, would be.
Yeah, so we'll have a lot more hut news pretty much immediately upon 0.4 starting. But that brings us to Revan's Revenge, which I will start with some props that Colin has recently made for a prominent planet in Knights of the Old Republic. So we have some Onderon specific props that will be used for a fancy new Onderon map. So I think it's something like 16 different props that are in here, different buildings, fences. So we can now confirm that Revan's Revenge will contain Onderon.
And clearly also a mission where you have to choose between who you're supporting on the planet, because that's everyone wants to play this.
I mean, there's the whole Death Watch and non-Death Watch stuff in Fall of the Republic for the Mandos. It's probably something similar there. You can get one really annoying hero or one really dickish annoying hero out of it.
Well, it's 3 and 3 because they have their little right and left hand people.
Oh, yay. Even more annoying characters. It's the only RPG mission where I've actively wanted to just leave the planet by killing everyone on it.
Oh, you mentioned KOTOR. Never mind. I was thinking the FOTR ones.
Can we just have the Ghost of Freedom ad?
That's actually not a bad idea. Let's do that.
Yes, they're very nice props, and I'm sure all the mappers will be very excited to use them on other planets outside Onderon. Because they're great, like generic mid-rim planet, kind of deserty stuff.
Yeah.
We're fun to play around with them.
Concrete stone blocks like that are just nice.
Yep. Yeah. And then they're quite modular too. I think you could probably build some fun structures out of them.
Oh yeah. It's like a Lego set. All the possibilities.
Yeah, more good prop work from Colin, who also did the Umbara props. And we got some other Revan's Revenge stuff to show. So a War Behemoth. This is the anti-infantry War Behemoth. I think this is the only untextured Sith ground unit currently, Philo?
I think so. Because this is one that's not planned for the initial release. Since that would just mean 2 War Behemoths at the start. So because here is the other one, the anti-vehicle one. And that's kind of was higher priority than the anti-infantry one. Even though the anti-infantry is probably the more prominent one in lore.
Mandalorian shrimp bombers. Yeah, there's a lot of the Sith in their alchemy at the time. There's a lot of that going on. So there's a lot of living Sith vehicles. I don't know if that's legally a vehicle. So this is a Mandalorian APC. Basically, for Revan's Revenge, we have all of the initially planned core roster done, basically. So the 15 units for space, ground. We've far surpassed that to the point that it's 10 units per faction on ground. They're almost done. And we're hoping to get to 7+ per faction in space as we sort out the maps and everything. So we're getting places with Revan's Revenge. We'll need to start on some hero stuff soon. And you'll be able to see a lot of that in action in the next little while. I'm kind of hoping to do a playthrough as the Mandalorians when Mandalorian Season 3 comes out. It just seems like good synergy. But all of the Mandalorian stuff looks like shrimp. That's kind of just how they work.
Centurion Battlecruiser is a pretty good looking texture.
The Mandos are a true animal effect.
Just robotic animals.
You can have mechanized shrimp versus dinosaurs, what everyone's been dreaming of since Empire at War came out. This is the Mandalorian Devob bomber? Fighter?
The first shrimp one was the bomber basilisk model.
Yeah, the big enclosed one.
Then we got more of the slightly earlier era Sith stuff in the Darafin and the Supremacy. So the Sith are in a bit of an interesting position where their roster that they get in the first version will be kind of split up through different mechanics later on as they get more content. because like they'd be kind of integrating stuff from different sources. So like pulling in Krath stuff, 3D printing a bunch of stuff at the Starforge.
Really, it's Revan's forces consist of a bunch of disparate groups ranging from Republic defectors, which would be represented by stuff like the Centurion and Interdictor, and then older Sith stuff they scavenge, and Kraith, and then designs from the Starforge. And
so in the initial releases, we're not going to be going too deep into those kinds of mechanics because we've got less content to work with. But much like we've done in Thrawn's Revenge and Fall of the Republic, throughout releases, as we add in the extra bits of content, we'll be more free to kind of push those in different directions. We got some more Mandalorians here, the Neo Crusaders that just skipped by. I'm gonna jump right back to that because it actually gave me my play bar again. We got Mandalore the Ultimate at the start. Some more Neo Crusaders. The era will be doing a bit more with infantry as buildable options. So field bases will still exist, but we're going to have more of the basic types of infantry that you can build compared to Fall of the Republic and Thrawn's Revenge. It's not that there's not vehicles for the era, it's just we're going to be playing with a bit more in the infantry direction. We got the
more common exotic weapon and squad types to help differentiate that as well from a gameplay point. I'm sure it'll mean absolutely nothing to the people who can't think that there are no differences between infantry, but whatever.
And the 5th Sith unit, T-78 and Bob's Sith APC with the little pyramids on the side. There's also a... not APC.
No, that is
FPC.
correct. But
I mean, it is armored.
I think armored personnel characters.
And Sentry here, which is another one from the same setup as the
literal dropship.
So I've shown off the Republic Space and Ground roster as it stands right now. There will be a full breakdown with the Sith and Mandos coming up. And then once other Republic Space or Ground stuff gets added, those will be covered as well. We're probably going to be doing 2 or 3 other Republic units beyond what you've seen. The Courier, which I think we've shown off in this video, maybe? I don't remember it.
Not yet.
But it exists, so it's unit number 6. It wasn't in the initial video, but we'll cover those as they get done as well.
It's not textured yet, if I recall, or rigged. So,
and I've got to redo the UV on the Ebon Hawk because that was fucking terrible. But that's where Revan's Revenge stands right now. We've got the Mandalorian Wars map. Is the first Galactic Conquest map that I've been working on for that. There will, of course, be other historical maps and other progressive maps, but for the Mandalorian Wars map, there's different era starts for that as well. You can start in the really early war or the really late war. Really early war is most of the maps Republic, and the Mandalorians have just kind of standard Mandalorian space. It's more intended as a Mandalorian start, whereas the second area you can choose is kind of when there's parity of forces. I think it's like 20 years later. But in that one, that's kind of more intended for either faction to start in. And that's probably the one I'll be showing off in the first Republic playthrough. The Sith, probably going to be waiting a little bit longer to properly show them off as a faction.
Because we'd probably have FTGU and then probably an even footing Infinities thing for the most part.
Yeah, that'll be one where to get like a 1v1v1, like all the factions around with a good amount of territory at their height, that'll be kind of a historical scenario. Because usually it's like Republic facing one enemy then another, or situations where like the Mandos and Sith are working together for some earlier stuff, but we're not necessarily going to be covering the Great Sith War. There's a chance.
Not initially, anyways.
Yeah. So
we'll see how much the scope creeps.
How much interest creeps as well.
That's Bob. That's just yes. There's always scope creep.
But which direction the scope creep is the actual question.
So I'll
Yeah.
pull up
Very
Keelhall's map video now. Then we got some other map screenshots to go over. You said there's no audio in this, right, Keelhall?
Yeah, I hope not.
Okay. Well, it
I
doesn't look
tried
like
to mute it. Okay. This is Balmora, like from SWTOR and Dark Empire, and Rogue Squadron. Big factory planet. It's actually mostly flat in terms of terrain. It's just all smoke and mirrors to make it look very vertical. And you can see a little fat down there. That was kind of a last minute addition. This is Bonadan. Another factory. Well, it's the corporate sector world from Han Solo's Revenge.
The last one was the gray factory. This is the beige factory. What color factory's next?
Green.
Be prepared map.
I actually liked how this one came out color wise though.
It's nice.
It really went all in on the orange. And this is Galantos, which is never actually shown really. But it's described as having like being covered in this green slime, so you think it's toxic or whatever, but the slime is actually like life-giving and like things grow in it very healthily. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's like healthy jello, yeah.
Let's just say algae.
The locals like it, but I guess they build spaceports for everyone else. I based it like vaguely on Japan. You have like the little roofs.
Japan is famous for having roofs.
That's just Balmora again.
We still need this one Balmora prop that just says Balmora makes, the galaxy takes.
I love that.
I think this is
Joel's
missions.
Mission stuff. Joel.
So there's a couple mission shots in here. There's also Rathana, and I put in your mirror map stuff, Keelhall, as well.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I just finished another map too.
But this is some of the mission maps first. There's a lot of indoor stuff for the missions. But if you want to talk about what some of them are.
Yeah, sure. Soon you will see the Malevolence. Currently you see space stations. The initial height map was done based off the FOC mission where you try to steal the holocron from Coruscant, but I heavily edited because in my opinion this was the best indoor mission base game had to offer, and for some cases where you like have to enter the Kua drive yards or a space station above Duro, for Operation Dodger's Land CGC, I thought it fitted most, and yeah, I'm fairly happy with how they turned out. Now you see Keelhall's maps again.
This is Mirror Lake. It's just kind of a generic unknown regions planet. Well, not very generic. It's actually very unique looking, but that's kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, I think you said you signed it to Murgo, Rand, and another one.
Yeah, I forget.
Emisari?
No. Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're just
it'll probably float around a bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the unknown regions planets have rather interesting descriptions to get unique maps for eventually. So.
This is the map 3 people worked on.
Yeah, this is Rathana.
So
I feel like I should introduce it first. So basically, I was working on Ferrari Junction, and I realized I wanted mountains around the side so you couldn't see the map edge. So I went out of my way and made like this really elaborate mountain background, but then I was like, I don't really want to work on Ferrari Junction right now. But I had this like really good mountain. And so Cho was like asking me, I forget what she said exactly, but it was something like asking for help or advice or something. And I was just like, do you want like just a plain mountainscape? And so like then she just basically built the props from there. And then it went to Rhino.
Yeah. I polished off the texturing, added the forest, destroyed a few mountains.
I'm
Just
sad.
it's a nice open map as well. So, and there's some good infantry only paths between LZs. So
It'd be good for some classic clone on droid heavy vehicle oriented combat.
About a few questions about the mission maps. Yeah, they're only missions, so you won't actually see them in generic battles. Like now, you will also see a map where you fight on top of a Venator.
Where are the horses?
That's for Snoke's Revenge, or however we're gonna call it.
Ascendancy 2?
Raise resistance.
Rise of Resistance. Ray of Hope.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah. So the idea is, in one case, you're fighting the Battle of Duro, and this is again heavily copied from 5 sentences of some random source book, Essential Guide to Warfare again. And you have to attack a station, bring it down to 1% health, and then have a mission to conquer it as a ground battle. And you have to capture the president of Duro or whatever his title is. And it's a fairly fun story. At this point, I have to give props to NMS for helping me with the texts and the speeches. He basically wrote the character mostly.
But yeah, no, that's old Star Wars Insider CIS Shadow Speed stuff for most of the Duro bits.
And another case of a person with a horrible name. Huladen Kegel sucks as a name. Oh yeah, now you're gonna see a map where you... Like, the new GC in Fall of the Republic is gonna called Rimward, and it's essentially most of Season 1 of TCW. And in this case, you have the Skytop station map where you have to rescue R2-D2. And I'm not kidding if I'm saying you're essentially playing half the season of the show.
Then we get this is a farther out shot of that same one.
Was the Malevolence one shown?
It wasn't the cycling.
Oh, okay.
We're getting there. Actually, I'll go to
Yeah, sorry. There
Malevolence one is mostly hallways, which is fitting, but
yeah.
I just finished another map. If you want to show the 17-second clip I just sent you.
I'll put that up right after the missions then.
All right.
It's a nice wall texture.
And this is the last one. Oh, this is a separate one. There's 2 from this one. All the landers coming in.
Oh yeah, that's the Duros one. To showcase the scene.
We'll be showing the opening cutscenes from both parts of that mission a bit later on. Then we have the Night at the Museum modification here.
The other one is also Night of the Museum modification, but just with more edits. And this one is based, like, the idea was a KDY showcase with many civilians running around and you controlling bounty hunters to get to the controls. The problem is the entire setup is a bit funny. If you guys play it, you will see it's not best thought through, I have to say. Because you can kill all the citizens there and they shoot back. I didn't thought this through.
there will definitely be some iteration on some of the missions beyond what's in the first release. So it happens with everything.
Joel, will we get to kill younglings?
Never, never.
All right, and we got the other map that Hall just sent.
Yeah, I was working on this till like 5 a.m. last night.
Very eerie visual.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's tentatively called Northern Terror because like it's kind of an Aurora Borealis thing. I also got to use the Pingani penguin people. You can see them in one of the pictures. They'll just be hanging out in the north there. Chilling. Ha ha ha.
Were the wisps going on this or different map?
They were planned for a different map, but I might try to sneak them in here somewhere.
All right, then we won't talk about those. Very exciting wisps.
They do look cool.
All right, so we got another of the cutscenes coming up, and then once we come back, we will have the New Republic and
show the two images. Well, the second one at least, so everyone can see the glorious penguins.
Try to download them. All right. So, rid of that. And where did that save to?
So in one of the things, I don't know if this has been mentioned before, but I've like messed with the infantry to make versions of civilians that just kind of meander aimlessly, and I found a way to like put them out of balance so that they just kind of walk around as like background decoration. And I did that with the penguins here, but you'll see them on a number of maps. Technically, they are already in the game with the Rancor on the Dathomir map, but they're mostly a 0.3 thing.
Those fun little penguin guys.
They're great.
One was
much
almost
better
a
design
Jedi.
than the.
Back in my day, they had a Wikipedia article called Killer Penguin, but they eventually gave it the correct name.
There was supposed to be one of the Jedi Masters, and Darth Bane was supposed to be a Pingani. Then they changed it into the other species being basically just a human instead. I was very upset by that.
They didn't.
Yeah, disappointing.
They didn't actually describe him. He just didn't show up at all. They just said he likes the cold, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, because it was cut from everything else. It was just never established properly. Yeah. We all know the truth.
They're definitely penguins.
We have them now. Send in the super droids.
Commander, get out there and stop those droids. I'm on it.
This way.
All right. All right. Was that one longer? I don't think that one was longer.
That was
short one. Okay. Cool.
Oh, I should probably mention that among the civilians, there are now gonk droids. So get hyped.
The most important.
Gonk.
Not until we get them as a buildable part of a faction. All right. Now we've got some New Republic stuff, which also includes some Imperial Reign Rebel stuff. Some
probably more Imperial.
Future New Republic. It's basically all of that faction line put together. There's not a ton of New Republic or Imperial stuff, but there's some big names coming up. So these are these for the Explorer? Is that what we're doing with it?
This
or
is
separate?
The mini MC80.
This is running with one of the designations, which is the MC80A types as the mini, like 1500-ish meter home one.
And this has a
That
slightly
version
different
was-
type in there with the lights you put up, Rhino. But
Yeah, so that one, the blue version is I'm going to call it the hero version. X-Wing Alliance, isn't it, Nolan?
Is the paint job you
Yeah.
used for that one, yes.
And then there's like a dark brown one, which I based off of the 2005 Battlefront 2 Moncal. And they have the scrolling lights. I don't know if you have the video for that.
yeah, that's in this.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so that should be coming up after this Sphereness here. We got 2 versions of Spherna, which
There's
are waiting for
bolt-on
Imperial
torpedo
rating.
racks, Skyded also, which I don't think are featured in this, but we can probably get like 3 in-game versions depending how things go. Hasn't been specifically decided.
These are the running lights
Oh,
on
yeah,
on the mini home one.
The nebula ship that looks like a nebula was the Rejuvenator, I think.
Yeah, so I'm going to just open that one directly right now. Here we go. So this is one of the kind of Vong War and Beyond New Republic GFFA ships. So Sky, do you want to talk about what you did here? I need to loop that.
Mariner with B4 cannon, end of Imperial reign, yes. That'd be the use. Not really TR relevant.
Yes.
Rejuvenator would be, however, TR relevant only.
So this, yeah. So it's basically the kind of the next step from the Nebula. I think it's 1,300 meters is the size we landed on for it. So it's still smaller than an ISD, but it's the next step evolution of kind of that era of Star Destroyer, which the Empire has their own ship we'll be seeing in a moment. That's kind of in the same vein. So, like, not the same ship, just the same idea of the next step in the faction's evolution. So for the people who complain that the Nebula isn't strong enough, then this will kind of be where you go from that. And then you don't need the strong Nebula submod that Jordan put out. Stronger Nebula submod.
Availability for this in generic progressives is probably dubious.
Or it's going to need to make a stronger. It's probably going to need to make a stronger Rejuvenator submod.
Maybe.
The stronger Strident submod.
SSD size Strident submod.
Also, it's nice to see that the new class isn't just. It's nice that it carries on the design stuff of the new class, rather than just ignoring that it exists.
Well, picking up on bits of lore that other people hated is like half our job.
Yeah, so this is a name that existed for a long time, but never got an actual depiction. So this is a design that Sky had to come up with based on
really, when you consider it, it's not a Nebula 2 or whatever, and a lot of the fan stuff where it's like, I'm doing this completely different design from an official ship and calling it a 2 is not how any of that really works in the setting, but it can just be a different ship. But the Rejuvenator specifically is Long War era SD, so its stats will likely reflect the situation of the conflict at the time.
It'll also be made out of coral. And on the kind of not good faction, but allied with the supposedly good faction, we get to the Hapens, which I kind of mentioned earlier, that Point 4 will see some new content for them, both on the fighter side and on some of the ships. I don't know why this is playing so slowly, but oh well, that'll make it easier to see some of it. But there are 1 or 2 more standard ships that they're going to be getting, but for the rest of what you're going to be seeing, they are a ship type that is specifically tied to one of the 6 houses. It's 3 houses in the live build, but there's 3 more houses that are being added there. So the government mechanics will be expanded to include some of the access to these ships, and in the second half of this, you'll see it come around to the House Prestige ships, which are kind of like if that house becomes the we haven't settled on any specifics yet, but if that house gets enough prominence through the government mechanics, It's kind of like their own version of the Star Home. So you won't be able to get access to all of the ships in a single playthrough, all of the prestige ships, but they'll be kind of one-off ships that you can get via the government mechanics. So right now, these are the kind of basic house ships, tend to be modified versions of existing ships. So I think the one we just saw was the Flare, another version of the Flare. But these will all be hopefully textured and in for 0.4. And Oz is in chat saying more of them, or giving more background on his designs for them. But yeah, like right now, the government mechanics for the Hapens are obviously very simple, where it's like you build at their shipyard or their house, you get the influence, then you can get another hero. That will be fleshed out a lot more. And we don't actually have anything Empire the Handy to show off today. Don't think about the term handy too much, but they will be getting their own government mechanics coming up as well. There's two that they're going to be getting, one that ties into the Chiss Ascendancy and one that ties into the local groups that they'd be aligned with. So there are some models for those that we've shown off before, not textures, but they'll be getting that in 0.4 as well. So 0.4, you get Hand, Hapes, Harsk, Huts. Anything else that starts with H in the universe?
Heroes?
Heroes will probably be included as well. So yeah.
Araba?
Harsk was already made as a joke.
Harrower.
Yes, joke.
Yeah. Sorry, how can you forget Harrower? The most important thing with the H.
Maybe as a submod for Revan's Revenge.
Can we capitalize
go
the H in Karen?
The only other things I can think of are things that already exist, like the H-Wing and the H-60. We've already done those.
So has it gone through fully once? I'm trying to download some more. All right, so I will put up. I'll let it go through the prestige ships one more time. So yeah, the government mechanics won't just be for those house commanders. The commanders will also get some changes so they're more unique. So they have different focuses to their bonus. We're kind of redoing all of the trait and tier system in 0.3, which we've got some of the basic plans for, but then it's arguing over 300 heroes. That's probably conservative, actually. We've got to be over 300, right?
We can check the page real fast.
I'd say easily.
Like legitimacy alone, that's probably 100 heroes.
There are around there are 700 entries or so on the hero sheet. Not all of them are used. Some are planning, some are options, some are a good chunk, but legitimacy is
only 540 of them are TR though.
Yes.
Only.
Yeah.
Yes. There's about 100 done for legitimacy in dev, anyways.
All right. So Porto has also redone the AAC. So we've got
Thing of beauty.
Well,
fresh new AAC setup. This is the AAC
this one's
3.
not a redo. This one's a
This is the other AAC. So the AAC 2 and 1, I think we've shown. They're similar or the same. I don't know. Were there two different?
Yeah, they're basically this an update of the old model.
Yeah. Then this is the AAC 3.
Getting old.
Yep. That's me. What? Yeah. That's the AAC 3. It's something. I can tell you that. It's something of a design. It is
Battlefront 3.
It is one of the designs in Star Wars. Yeah,
that's actually arguable.
Yeah, it is one of the designs, and sticking with tradition, I slapped on some graffiti on there. I have no idea what it says now. I've completely forgotten.
It says Corran Horn, Quinlan Voss. It's all the names of Kenobi.
Absolutely. It also has, I took some inspiration from real world tank design. Maybe a little too on the nose, so I included stuff from like the Abrams, the T90, stuff from Desert Storm. So yeah, little Easter eggs because I really wanted to do a tank, but I don't really have the skills to do a real world tank. So you get that.
Yet.
And you'll all be grateful for it.
Exactly.
Is that why the tank's staring you down with the eyes?
Yeah, those are so for the eyes, those are some like laser dazzlers from the T90, and then the thing in the middle is a periscope from the Leopard 2 tank. Because originally in the Battlefront 3 model, that's a cockpit, and I really did not like the look at that at all. So I just completely scrapped that and slapped those two things together. So yeah.
This is where I point out the smoke is technically valid. Wizards of the Coast says that homing spider droids and other vehicles of similar size can deploy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just little greebles, but Abrams smoke dispensers are cool. So
this is a good. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob. I was just gonna make a joke.
Go ahead, Polyworld.
Isn't this thing also like a size larger than the 1 and 2, if I remember correctly? Just a little bit chunkier.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it is closer to the like bulkier medium tank size than the light vehicle size. So
Star Wars does have a distinct lack of smoke being used for tactical purposes.
Because they have perfect sensors.
I mean, we see, yeah, except in Rebels where smoke works just fine. So it's just
smoke, just not.
Yeah, it's just plot stuff. But yeah, that's just basically my thoughts on the AAC3. It's almost done. I still have a lot more I want to do with it, but it's almost ready for in-game use. I just have to fix a couple baking errors.
in-game wise, we'll probably throw it with the NRDF infantry upgrade around that time, given how vague some of the timeline stuff is, and just it's a good point for New Republic ground development, which anything in the area is really sort of speculative. If we did more with the BF3 designs, there's no guarantee we will. It's not an area the faction really focuses on too much in universe, and even say about like a lot of the Von War stuff that they end up using is literally just like AT-ATs and A9s when they actually need heavy vehicles, but just giving late era and our Imperial vehicles is not really something we want to do from a roster point.
Yeah, it's one of 2+ instances where there are units that you can kind of say are a progression of each other that we can throw in with research, where like assault frigates and assault frigate Mark II, we can kind of just say, oh, you can do that research yourself, and then the future mentions of assault frigate are actually referring to this one now, because we don't want to just throw on everything where you can build 60 of the same units like we were talking about with the CIS earlier, or CIS and Republic earlier. But we have several more of the cutscene videos. We're going to show 2 of them now, and then we'll get back with the rest of the models, including some World Devastator stuff, which people are asking about in the chat. I'll explain a bit of what's going on with that, as well as the Canon Unit submod, and then we'll watch some Death Clones and try to answer some other questions as we finish the stream. So we still got probably half an hour worth of pure video content to see, but we'll be back in a moment.
I knew he'd return.
There is an incoming transmission, sir.
Ah, put it through.
Greetings, Captain. I'm Anakin Skywalker, General of the Grand Army of the...
I know who you are, Skywalker.
Well, my reputation precedes me, then. I've been ordered to surrender myself, the entire crew of this vessel, and my ship, in exchange for safe passage of food and medical supplies to the people of Ryloth.
I don't think they're going to attack, Commander.
We'll have to retreat.
No! Wait! Remember, they are droids. They're just a little slow. They'll figure it out.
I'm just about to say, aren't those fixed?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
This one still has some few bugs because this is the version Rhino and I did way back a few months ago. Technically before I joined the team, so it is reworked now and looks better and has less bugs, which is the important part. But it gets the idea across.
Well, that's what you get for uploading it today at 10:22 a.m.
No response.
But yeah, thanks to Rhino and the first scene Corey showed when the stream started with the Lad's Landing, this also plays into the Ryloth mission chain, which is literally 3 missions with each one based on an episode. So you can play through the entire arc if you want to in the GC Rimworld, which is kind of cool. But yeah, and I have to make special thanks for Rhino for all those fancy missions, animations.
Well, now you all have a reason to play the final mod where you can see the full version, the finished version, rather than the work in progress version. There you go. Then, so we have a couple of the other units that apply in some of the prior categories, but were finished or submitted slightly after the other videos were rendered. So we have Philo's mini pod walker here. I don't know, Philo, if you're around.
Yeah, I'm still around. So
it's cute.
Yeah, so I finished this earlier today, I think, like 3 hours ago or something like that. So yeah, it was very sudden, I guess. It's kind of meant to be the EAW podwalker that the Huts have access to. And since there's a blurb that says that it's a precursor of the ATST, I kind of went more in the direction of it's not an ATAP, it's a later evolution of the ATXT line that goes into a tripod design and maybe evolves into the ATAP later on, but still shares a lot more with the ATXT over the ATAP. Sorry, the ATAP.
Ground concept for something that was used as a test bed anyways, so pretty sensible.
Like EAW released, like EAW was developed at the same time as Revenge of the Sith, basically, so that's why there's a lot of weird applications of things that first show up in Revenge of the Sith, where you have the Jedi Cruiser Venator, you have the ATAP in some strange formatting way. It's so tiny in the base game and so big in the mod. But the other render we have in this category, we have the Altieri Frigate, which is another one of the Mandalorian ships. Well, Mandalorian in the standard Mandalorian way where they stole it from other people first. But Arios has been learning to texture for the team. I think this was his first texture.
Yes, and we had showed it technically another version off the last time. However, that one was missing any kind of lights whatsoever because I did not know how to export it properly. So I have since fixed that. I have several others, I just have not been able to properly export and get them working in Blender. Because that next step is fun. But
so
yes.
The Mandalorians are kind of like the Sith, what I was saying before, where they have a lot of stuff in their core roster pool in the first release that is probably going to be split out to slightly different acquisition methods in the future. But for now, this is one of their little frigate buddies. There's also an Altieri Corvette, which I think has some similar design elements. We haven't made it yet, but it's probably going to be one of the 7 starting Mandalorian units in the 0.3 release of Revan's Revenge as well.
They need small stuff.
Yeah. They have 2 or 3 battle cruiser size ships, and they don't have enough small stuff right now. But that takes us to the Empire, which has, again, not as much as some of the other places, but a few cool things in here. We have the Blaze Trooper, which everyone who's played... is it an Outcast? Everyone hates that?
No, Star Wars Kenobi. Or...
Oh, it's not... Okay, yeah.
Right. One of those
the
two.
Clone
I think
Wars,
it's the Ross game.
And an updated Ton Falk. Version number 17. There's also a version with about 30 and bomb arrays on it, which must be about 100,000 polys.
Shadow Security Droid here, which is a really obscure Wizards of the Coast unit, but it's based on something a bit more recognizable.
And this is the Turbulent. So it's the Pure Empire Rejuvenator period counterpart, not actually the same unit again. But so with the Dark Empire stuff, which we're going to see the World Devastators coming in a second, we've kind of explained before, I haven't done a full video breakdown of it, how any of the factions, any of the Imperial factions rather, so the Empire, any of the Warlords, can form Dark Empire by basically winning the legitimacy game. So once all the other factions are integrated, you unlock, or 2 of the other factions are integrated. If you have most of the legitimacy, you get Dark Empire, which means you get the World Devastators, you get the Eclipse, you get Palpatine, and then that faction is the one that progresses through the rest of the Imperial stuff. So they basically become the Empire at that point. So they're the ones that would go from Palpatine to Karnor to Dala to Pelion. And that'll include some of the later stuff like the Turbulent. So if you are playing as the Greater Maldrude, you win legitimacy, you become Dark Empire, you're going to get Dala, you're going to get Pelion, and you're going to get those later era researches or however they unlock, like the Turbulent, which has a chance of showing up in 0.3 as well. So we'll have more in-depth explanations of how that's going to work on a standalone video, but that's the Cliff Notes version of it. The World Devastator is 100% coming back this release, which we've said every prior release since they were removed, but this time I mean it for real, because I have sorted out their main ability. We haven't figured out necessarily what we want them to do in tactical differently, if we want any other specific like tactical abilities for them, but the main thing was like production and how they're different from other units. So the way that's basically going to work now is when you get to Dark Empire, you get Titus Clev as a hero. So there are 3 tiers of World Devastator. This is the kind of battle cruiser size you're looking at. The Destroyer is this smaller one. So you start off with one of these little baby World Devastators with Titus Clev in it. Clevs will then upgrade to the battle cruiser. And then once you kind of max out one World Devastator, its next upgrade, you do that by having it in battles. When ships die in battles that World Devastators are present for, it gains some of that material. You get to 100 material, it upgrades, or for the max level, it spawns a new one, and you go up again through that. So you'll be able, theoretically, to get a bunch of fully upgraded ones, but you can only ever have one that's upgrading at a time. So you can only have one baby at a time, or one mid-tier one. So total. So they'll be not necessarily pop efficient or resource efficient on the lower tiers, but they'll be worth having for, like, you're not spending money on them. They're powerful ships, but you need to kind of protect them until they're able to contribute on their own. So in larger maps, they'll probably scale a little bit better because you'll have more opportunities to kind of farm up against other factions. In smaller maps, you're not going to get probably more than 1 or 2, but they are still powerful battle cruisers for you. And the flip side of it, it's kind of the same situation that we have them set up as in Ascendancy. where things like the Galaxy gun that destroy a planet, that's more powerful on a smaller map than a larger one, but something that kind of scales infinitely, like the World Devastators, that's more powerful on a larger map than a smaller map. So hopefully we'll also be able to get a Galaxy gun in for this release and have our first planetary destruction stuff now that we have a bit more set up in the influence department. So there's some downsides to blowing up planets. You're not just going to be going around blowing up planets for the fun of it. There's some actual gameplay considerations for it. But yeah, so Dark Empire will have all those fun things. And that brings us to a bunch of assorted renders that I couldn't include in some of the other factions. So Sky has redone the Armadia, that's what this one is, for the Yavithans. And so this is a straight up replacement of the former Armadia. The render's a little bit small, so you won't be able to see as many of the changes right now. But I'll scale this up.
ATTP for Canon IR side, same as the Sperna.
Does the Flak 88 really needs legs?
Makes it even scarier.
Corporate Alliance Artillery here, which will be main roster for CSA in TR. Just they have some nice normal indirect fire already.
Killiks, the first of the many Killik infantry model types. These are kind of the most standard
on the tour ones. Yeah, I don't recall specifically which hive file was going for. We have a bunch of like speculation and notes and different design comments.
We have a follow. Actually, follow, you're there. Go for it.
I think it's horror at the moment, but this is the Tor Killik. So it's probably also gonna involve some Tor hives having similar models, but then there's probably gonna be some shuffling around which Tor variant represents which hive. So this might shift to a different hive then.
Yeah, so there's basically a full write-up that Philo did on different hives that are going to kind of fill different gameplay niches for them. So unlike a lot of the other factions, I guess kind of like the Yuzon Vong, they're not going to have like vehicles that the bugs are driving in most cases. Instead, you'll have the different hives where like your heaviest vehicle is going to be a really beefy bug. Your smallest vehicles are going to be really non-beefy bugs. Some of your projectiles will also be itty-bitty bugs.
Just to clarify, so most of the write-up was Jorits, as if I remember correctly. I just did.
Yeah, it was a good collection of money.
Yeah, it's Jor and I built up the base stuff, and then Philo ran with a good chunk of the like infantry stuff.
Just designed basically insects to the different hives and collected the random amount of different depictions from the various Killiks and designed them to a hive, basically.
And Inertial has also done some kind of art tests on some of the Killik ships. So we want to have at least one of the nest ships. Like we want to have a fighter and a capital ship of some kind for the Killiks in this next release so that they can have something on their territory. So there'll be at least the one infantry type and hopefully those ships. We're not going to delay the mod for a Killik nest ship if it's not done by then, or a shard, whichever one it's going to be. But
luckily we can use regular surplus stuff that they did use at worst. So
some auxiliary hulks thrown in from cover interpretation.
Hulks and VSDs and whatever.
Yeah, so similarly to the Killik right up there, I said we don't have anything to really show off with the Empire of the Hand right now, but we do have the models for some of their other space stuff that we've shown off before, and we have been planning the ground reworks for them, as well as the Chiss ground roster. So a little while back, I did a full write-up of all of their ground units, what their playstyle should be, and what the specific unit function should be. So it's just a matter of Cameron having time to actually start doing the designs for those, and then hopefully it won't be too long after that we're able to start getting some assets in. It may be a situation where until then, we might slot in a couple of the most similar counterparts to what the intended units are for the faction, so that they have a little bit more to work with in the short term before we get to the actual Empire of the Hand units, which obviously is breaking the lore, but just to give the faction a little bit more cleanup, that can happen. Or restatting the existing models to kind of fit that vein as well. But yeah. So Unknown Regions will be a much better place now with all these factions starting to happen. There's 3 or 4 Chiss units, like dedicated Chiss units that the Empire of the Hand doesn't have, which are already done, which have models and textures finished. So they will hopefully make it for 0.3 or 0.4. But everything's starting to move there.
Yeah. There are, of course, the SD9 and SD10 droids, which I think we showed off untextured last time. Yep. Maybe. That, yeah, nothing changing there. There'll be influence units for Belmora and TR.
Got the little SRV. We have some
Ian/V19 speeder in PDF form here, anyways.
For the playable Naboo faction.
Obviously.
Or abandoned factories and independent abandoned factories and independent forces.
Playable Naboo
Naboo faction.
We will probably throw the gray and team color skin on with the Republic style troopers for Era 1 roster-ish also eventually, but
Wisa will be conquerors.
Darth Jar Jar is our Force user hero.
How would Panaka play into that, considering he's a Moff?
Simple, you make him into a real Moff.
Well, there's a government choice between him or his dead nephew.
It's an emergent faction, so it's... You could start later, and he just wouldn't be there, but if they're independent, then... If they break off, it's like all of the Paradox games, where Naboo breaks off. just like in the 1400s.
Hey, Triton, you just make a small typo and make him into a Moff, not a Moff.
Grand Moff Tarkin?
Just a really large Moff. Just keep him away from candles.
Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this giant lantern. Oh, it's so pretty. All right, we have another cutscene to look at. Then we'll be checking out some Death Clones, answering some questions while the 17 minutes of new Death Clones plays. And we'll follow that up with the final cutscene, and that'll be the night. So we'll be right back. Enjoy the next cutscene. Truly inspiring words from Officer Kegel there. Anything you want to mention about the Duros missions, Joel? We're going to be playing the second Duros cutscene as the final one. But
yeah, the Duros mission chain, I'm personally very fond of it because the text likely had this Duros guy as a total jerk who left his people behind, because when Grievous arrives, he's just gone. Like, this is half the information we have about this battle. And I wasn't happy that we had another evil alien in Star Wars, so the idea was to make him a bit more compelling and heroic. So the next cutscene will also reflect this. And yeah, again, NMS helped greatly with the text for this part here, and it's the mission chain involves you having to capture him, and if you don't, he escapes, and you have to chase him to the ground of the planet. And if you do capture him, the planet joins you, and you get him as a hero in the GC. It's a fun mission chain.
And so you'll see the other cutscene after we do some death clones and some questions. But these are, I think you actually labeled them, Rhino, so you'll be able to see the start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it goes person, model, model, and then person. So it's really only two of us.
All right. So I guess we'll take some questions while we go over that. I just want to make sure it's not okay. There's no sound, right?
No, there's no sound at all. No.
Don't want to make sure I'm not deafening everyone. So we have a question from Ethan who asks about the future Chiss and Empire of the Hand rosters. Will you be including anything inspired by the Thrawn Ascendancy series due to the lack of legend source material? Any chance of plasma spheres? So I don't know. We might end up doing some weapon types based on some of those. They're always a little bit tricky.
Need to sort out plasma stuff in space for Vong and some of the Rev stuff eventually. So I guess maybe some of the pre-Clone Wars ships we could throw it on.
Yeah, like
largely... it probably wouldn't be specifically how Zan does it in the new stuff because his space combat there is really weird, but in a way that fits the more typical EaWX stuff that ends up being developed for multiple purposes, it's not impossible.
Yeah, like so we get this a bit of like, oh, are you adding the ships from it in the mod? But there's not really actual descriptions of the ships. We just get like rough classifications and that's it. So the way he uses the term like Night Dragon and stuff, that's kind of just going to be a stand-in term for destroyer or whatever. So like it'd be Syndic class Night Dragon, Phalanx class Man of War. So we're not changing we're not redoing the ships based on them, but that just kind of informs some of the fluffier bits about it. But like characters, setting stuff, that's all being taken into account for the development of the Chiss and the Empire of the Hand, and even the unknown regions more generally. So some of the local forces that they work with that are incorporated incorporated into the Empire of the Hand, they're based on like the Pakash and the other weird named aliens the Gawaiian, those kind of things from that trilogy.
Best race, best species, best name.
Will there be more missions from Galactic Battlegrounds? That's porting stuff 1-to-1 like that isn't necessarily the main goal, but nothing's really off limits. I don't know, Joel, if you want to talk about any specific plans you may have.
I would, but the fear is that Jorad will kill me because I never played Galactic Battlegrounds.
Well.
See, that would require me like actually going to Germany, and that's way too much effort. So you're probably
they have like you can like Uber assassinate or something. It's got to be a thing.
I mean, I voted for expanding fronts for mod of the year. This has to be something. But yeah, maybe those could be missions. Currently, the list is fairly long, so stuff like this is likely low priority. Currently, I'm trying to get as much stuff for Fall of the Republic done in 0.3 and then Revan's Revenge. And what comes then, I'm not quite sure. Like, ideally, Thrawn's Revenge would finally get some fixes on the Coruscant evacuation mission and the Katana stuff, but yeah, nothing set in stone.
And Revan's Revenge will hopefully get a bit more focus before TR. So, yeah, we said earlier, Mandalore will be in the progressive maps for Fall of the Republic. Any images for Phase 2 Clone Legions? There was some Fall of the Republic stuff shown off towards the start of the stream as well. Is Silri in Thrawn's Revenge? She is not. I don't know that we're actually going to do anything with the with any of that. There's a possibility for her to show up somewhere, but we haven't really gotten any solid plans for that. Duskin League will come back.
We don't even know where that tomb is, though, which is the main thing.
In the Star Wars galaxy.
As long as the Night Sisters join Hapes and then Silri comes back, obviously it works.
So you have to pick one of the evil Hapen houses. Then instead of getting the Witches of Dathomir, you get the Night Sisters. Then through them you get Silri, who brings in the Sith army, which is how the Hapens get the Sith Interdictor as a core roster unit.
I see no problem with this.
Okay, but getting to use Rev units does sound kind of fun.
And I'm sure there'll be a sub mod within like 5 minutes of me forgetting to take a file out of the mod when releasing Fall of the Republic or something.
Ooh, that's for FOTR. We would like to do mostly, like me and Joret, some Era 1 GCs for it for 0.4, definitely not for 0.3. But Stark proper isn't really that good of a GC because it's like 2 space fights and 1 long ground slog. Maybe Historical Battles portion eventually could handle that individually.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like an Episode 1 Galactic Conquest where people ask for it a lot, but like, there's one planet. What's the conquest? More of a historical mission kind of situation.
First you lose Naboo, then you get Naboo.
Yeah, like Grassy Plains Historical Battle, not the worst thing.
Yeah.
Because we do have that menu.
So 0.3, New Republic will get their own version of Jedi Command Staff. I don't know if they're going to get the ground... No, Nemesis really wants them to get a ground command staff, but I don't know that it's...
0.3 probably.
Yeah,
it's not a faction I think needs more heroes in the current state.
Other factions...
Maybe if we include like a good chunk of the existing ones in it too, and then you can have an option for them to be in the ground one or in the space one, so it doesn't bloat the amount, but yeah, not in current setup.
Yeah, like someone else was asking if other factions are getting the command staff. It's not a universal function. It's because there are specific factions that have so many named characters and no other way to really put them in. So it's not the kind of thing that we're looking to put into the Hapens or the Chiss or whatever. They don't really have the characters to compete with the New Republic, which is part of where the command staff mechanics come from. Even the CIS has some limitations there, though they have 1 or 2 areas where they could get a very limited focus command staff setup. And then for other factions, like the Imperial factions, they have legitimacy as kind of their version of it. So when we set up the government mechanics, we don't want every faction to end up with the same setup for everything. The point is to use those to differentiate the factions. So generally, if something works well on one faction, that's where we want it, and we'll try to find something that is just as interesting for everyone else, instead of just trying to like run everything into the ground. But
another thing is Corey reworked the generic missions for Fall of the Republic, and they're also coming to Thrawn's Revenge now.
Yes.
So fun to look there. And they also now have random rewards, and the entire mission setup is a bit more random with what you have to do, which is also more fun.
With a few new units thrown in for those rewards as well. So some other things that are entirely new to the mod. Was the Turbulent redesigned at all during development? Don't remember having the Bridge Tower. This is the first time we've shown off the model, I think. You might be thinking of Toblerone's one that was released for submods earlier. That was a bit more resurgent looking. I don't think we've posted the Turbulent anywhere. But someone was asking about the Starhawk, and I did mean to talk about this earlier. We had an idea that we wanted to use for the Starhawk tractor beam. Unfortunately, we're not 100% sure if it'll work yet, which is why I didn't have a preview video for that today. But I did want to talk about the cannon unit submod a bit more generally. So that's the MC75 in the current public release, and the Starhawk coming into that. Where I mentioned earlier on in the stream, we have the kind of new options menu with the clone legions and the ability to turn on and off cruel AI. In Thrawn's Revenge, that'll include those unit-based submods. So rather than downloading the MC75 as a separate submod that you have to install and run that way, you'll be able to go to that options menu and then you can turn it on from there. So it'll be included by default with the mod. It's just you turn it on and off yourself. So that should make it a bit easier for people to get into it if they want to use it. Saves us from having to do weird stuff to update the files, and there are a few other things that a few other unit mods that would potentially fit within that same kind of function. So like I think in the prior EaWX con we announced the Fractal Sponge submod that Porto was working on with Ascendancy. So they'd be a kind of candidate for that as well on the Imperial side. But yeah, so we're trying to limit the extra downloads on that. There are some things that have to be submods. We can't reasonably include it in the main mod with just a switch like that. But when it's just units and heroes that are getting turned on and off, that makes most sense to include that way.
Random question I see going back a ways. Vagari options are definitely something we'd think of for the unknown regions. Especially because some of their units are specifically ones that are kind of common. So if we can make a fire kiln, or that's Nusoevza, never mind. Yeah, the other one. I completely am forgetting the name.
Surfake, Paskla.
Yeah, Surfake and Paskla. Those specifically are things that could definitely show up if we have signs for them. But we won't be too concerned if they don't show up for 0.3 or anything.
I think we even showed off T78 Surfake in the last con as well. There should be images of that floating around.
The base design for it anyways, because a good chunk of those unknown region ships are supposed to have like 4 variants or so.
Yeah. Makes our job easier.
Yeah.
We just need one of us to
do the
decide to do an infantry model for them. Because we actually do have an image of what Vagari look like. So it makes that a little bit easier too.
I just shill for Lugubra.
Weird worms with legs?
Yes.
We already answered the Stark Hyperspace War question, so asking it multiple more times isn't going to change the answer. 0.3 changes for skirmish. I think there have been a couple balance changes, but there's not like a major skirmish rework.
Just the supremacy mode for TR, updates to it in FOTR, and then just general changes to some units.
Usual tuning that goes on, nothing really specific.
Yeah. Usual, someone's brought up an issue, I fix it, and then in the update that gets fixed. And don't ask me what I fixed, because a lot of that stuff was nearly a year ago and I've forgotten.
I'm looking for other questions that have been asked. As far as showing other stuff that wasn't shown in this stream, not going to get us to show more previews of other things like that.
Corey, when will we add Star Wars to the mod?
We already did. There's wars everywhere. Any fleet units planned for the Sith Eternal Empire? So the Eternal Empire kind of would be able to fill a similar role to the Yuzan Vong, but several years earlier, where they'd be an option for kind of an emergent faction or a crisis event.
Only several years.
4,000 is several.
Yeah, just a rounding error.
We expect Hunt for Zinj to be reintroduced in 3.3. I don't know that we'll be able to get to much else with the historical maps in general. Like, the progressive maps are taking a lot of the focus there, and redoing Hunt for Zinj in this release may not end up being feasible. it might just be a situation where we go back through those other historical maps and re-adding some of the formerly cut ones or repurposing some of the existing ones in the next release. Because otherwise it goes from making 42 progressive maps for Thrawn's Revenge, 9 progressive maps for Fall of the Republic, plus Rimward campaign for Fall of the Republic, the Western Reaches map for Thrawn's Revenge, and then all of the initial maps for Revan's Revenge, to adding like 30 to 40 more maps on top of that. So I think it makes most sense for development resources to for us to not do that. It seems unlikely that we'd get to a point where that's reasonable. So
to add to this, it also, from my personal opinion, since we're doing the story of most of the historicals anyway, having those reworks be moved together also makes sense if the GC and the story gets done at the same time.
Yeah, like they're with Hunt for Zinj in particular, it's kind of a situation where what makes the most sense gameplay wise is for some elements of the map to be just included in a regional progressive map where it's that area of space where you can select which area you're starting in, and then the kind of narrative elements of it being turned into their own, like having that be the focus of the campaign. So it doesn't make sense to have the latter until like the actual story can be done for it. So that'd be the requirement there. Whereas the regional map will just kind of depend on when we have time to set up that. Like the Western Reaches campaign that I mentioned, that's going to be an era configurable one in the kind of southwest of the galaxy. So that'll have like the Siruvi, New Republic, Ariadu Authority, and the Empire. And that's what I'm going to be doing the next Ariadu playthrough in, the one that's going to be starting this month. And that'll be kind of a northeast version of it with the CSA, Zinj, Greater Maldrude, New Republic, and some other factions poke into there as well. And that'll be kind of the two different ways that Hunt for Zinj comes back. When are you adding the Nebula MB2? You're banned.
No, I'm pretty sure the MC40A was shown in the turntables.
Someone was asking for the 21st and 41st Phase 1, Phase 2 regulars, so I put those in the...
Oh, the MC40A was shown, yes. So
yeah, okay. I was about to say, I thought I did one.
Yeah, that was about 5 minutes ago in the video.
Yeah.
No, the turntable, not the Duckling.
Okay. Have you thought about only space maps on the overall map without ground half? No, we're not. That would be basically making two entirely different versions of the mod that we have to upkeep. That we're not just. You can't just turn off ground like that and not impact the rest of the mod. If people want to do that in their own copy, feel free. But that is not an official thing we're working on.
Infrastructure, economy, gameplay pacing, everything's affected.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Are you going to ask when you're getting paid again? Because I ban you too.
Yeah, you can ban me. No, I was wondering, do you think we could show off the work in progress World Devastator textures, or should we hold off on that?
I can pull the images up for that. Because you sent those in DM?
Yeah, yeah. At least just the big one. That's
okay.
Well, that's yeah.
Right, I'll pull that up right now, or in 55 seconds. We'll have one more texture there.
Clone Force 99. If we did anything with that, it's probably going to just be folded into the regular clone command staff, and people can just ignore it if they don't like them. But
I think they meant Clone 99, the old guy, as a local defense.
You're right. That's not that patch. Never mind. This is more of a meme question than I thought.
You don't know. Maybe they just. Well, actually, with Nolan's work to do all the different blood splatters or something, you could get Clone 99 to walk around just cleaning those up.
I thought you were going to say he was just going to turn it into a blood splatter.
He's just sitting there pulling together all the gunk of the dead clones, just like the simulations. Is that a kind of torture? All right, so we got the work in progress World Devastator textures that'll pull up here. Poro's been working on. This is the battle cruiser size, not the little baby destroyer size. There's been a few questions about like future government mechanics or government mechanics for existing factions, the GFFA stuff. That we'll get to later. That'll have to be their own explanations once we have them planned out. There's some rough plans for some of them, but nothing fully solid until we actually get to it. The next areas that government mechanics will really be worked on are the things this release for the Dark Empire stuff. There will be some basic government mechanics for the Revan's Revenge stuff that we'll explain once we know what they are, because there's a few options there, but that'll be sometime after the basic setup of like the units and heroes and all that. I've already said the Old Republic and Revan's Revenge, they'll have command staff mechanics because they have a lot of applicable characters for some categories. Beyond that, we haven't really said too much or decided too much. But anything else we should get to for that?
I put the clone skins in the chat for the
in this
submissions
here.
Yeah, just the regular ones because those are new and like they've shown up in the background for a bunch, but we haven't really put them front and center yet.
Okay, so I'll throw those up right now. We thought about making a Star Wars faction lore and all with fans or devs having your own special little thing. I mean, we get enough room to be creative with a lot of the existing factions. So like adding another one just to make more stuff up isn't necessarily, I don't think, that attractive to any of us.
I mean,
I think they're asking if we could be a faction ourselves in the mod. That kind of
like self-insert fan fiction.
Yes, self-insert fan fiction. I think that's what the question is.
No thanks. That.
Well, me, Charlie, and Ek are in Yoden mod.
Well, that's different.
If we want a deep dive, we can always just add the centrality or the Senex sector.
Independent forces.
Just give one of our names to a Vagari general who shows up in some NPC fleet.
Well, the Hutts have their own space station, like the Empire's Valaduja, maybe Quen. So they'll start with the same goal at like XQ through goal and through probably Empress progression that other factions have. But eventually they'll hopefully get their own space station set. It might not even be right away because like I might shut the stream down and then someone has a bunch of stations done. That happens before. Like Oz had his vacation where he came back with all the Hapens done, but it's not going to be the kind of thing where usually the metric for that kind of stuff is like, is this a thing we're going to delay the release for? And if we're done everything else in 0.4, Hut stations wouldn't be a delaying factor. I think is the easiest way to put it. Would Ascendancy factions or planets be added in TR mods? If you mean the Timothy Zahn trilogy, we talked about that a little earlier, where we do use that as a source for Unknown Regions lore. If you mean the Ascendancy mod, they're all in there. So there we go.
Corey, someone asked about the aliens and genders for Republic Infantry. Is there something new to tell?
No.
I need to do the head stuff and rigging, and then we need to figure out the mesh names and the script and stuff. It's not hard, it's just a lot of busy work.
Yeah, that's most likely not going to be 0.3. Because we have like so much other faction setup to do between Revan's Revenge and like the initial setup for the other TR factions that focusing on those infantry right now is unlikely to take priority. Like once we start it, it's like Nolan said, it's not a difficult thing. It's just a bit of a time consuming thing.
It wouldn't be like specifically New Republic, but like pretty much anything with open heads depending on the specific infantry type in use. New Republic's just a really good, obvious example for it. And it would probably depend on how we end up doing militia stuff, which would also be 0.4.
Yeah. Do you think any technically canon ships highlighted by EC Henry will make it into a mods or some mod? Some of them would probably be included in Imperial Reign, especially. We have a Brahatok. I don't know that we've shown the Brahatok.
We have.
But...
I think we've shown one of the cruisers also. Historically, we have on the server at least.
I think we showed the Brahatok last stream.
Is it that old?
Yeah, we did.
And in some independent videos, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, like that one obviously people know about more beyond EC Henry stuff, but like those kind of original trilogy background things will probably make more sense to have in Imperial Reign, where there's a bit less to work with.
Also not competing with dozens of other New Republic units.
Yeah.
Although they kind of tend to not be that useful for Empire at War in general.
Depends on
the smaller
little
stuff,
tankers and stuff is just not super helpful to have. So I'm not on too many of those.
I know Arios has like some of the smaller Moncal things textured if they want to share.
I have the MC60 A and B, just not applied to an actual model.
Sure. Yeah, one of those is like an example of one of the same ships.
I posted 3 more screenshots if you want to showcase them.
I'll pull some of those up. Oh yeah, I did have a few of the other. We get to show those. So there is actually something else to put up. I think, yeah, I have all those already. So I'll pull these last ones up. We got a few more screenshots from some of the missions that we'll put up while answering a couple more of the questions. Then I was wondering what that other scene I had was. Now I know, or now I remember. I get rid of this. And there we go. That first one was obviously covered a bit. It'll come back around, don't worry.
I mean, it's nothing major, just a few
Don't know
more.
why the blue diver's in there.
It jumped out of hyperspace. It's now on our starfield.
Is this already the redone blue diver? Or the...
No, that's the one from the image I had for the thumbnail of the New Republic guide. That I guess snuck in.
Oh, those are Moncal ships. It's never redone enough.
It's not released. It's not unique per instance in the mod, but it's released or unique per release.
So not every cannon unit would make it into the cannon submod. So like U-Wing and TIE Reaper wouldn't necessarily be in just because they're there for Imperial Reign.
Point isn't putting the entirety of the content we make for Imperial Reign into a TR option. It's just to have like
make Nemesis.
A couple of the specific popular ships as an option for people who like it.
Like Spermina, whatever, however you say Hammerhead.
Spermina, whatever.
Not gumming as far as I know. That will be actually around only for Imperial Reign and not before.
I'm sure people will port it.
No doubt.
Yeah. Yes, more clone heroes I need to do stats for. Even if they're just mission specific.
I mean, I'm still shelling for them to be Cody spawns. It would be fun.
So we do actually have a gameplay mechanic where you conquer specific planets and you can build specific unique units. Although we should note that that tends to be with the smaller groups with influence units, like the Bakura Star Destroyers, not what a lot of people have in mind, where you take Kuat, you can make ISDs.
You take Kuat, you can elect Vakishesh, you can get a unique variant. It's the closest you get.
Is true.
But that's 3 steps divorced from the...
Right. So, if people want to talk about other questions, we have the Discord server. There'll be some other news videos coming up soon enough with some of the other content for Point 3 in particular. And then in the future, there'll be years and years of other shit we're making. Yay! But yeah, so there's a link to the Discord in the description. You can also go to the link that is pinned here or in the description to vote for Thrawn's Revenge and Fall of the Republic in the top 100 for Mod of the Year 2022. You can vote for as many mods as you like. So if you want to vote for us, if you want to vote for other mods like Expanding Fronts for Galactic Battlegrounds that Jord also works on, if you want to vote for mods that none of us work on, you're legally allowed to do that. So for competition's sake, we are not endorsing that. There are plenty of good mods, but if you vote for ones that aren't us, you'll make us sad. But yeah, so some of us will be hanging out in the Discord for probably most of the rest of the day and the rest of our lives for some of those other more specific questions, some of which we'll continue to ignore until we get to that point in development. But thank you all so much for your support throughout the year and the years. We're going to be hoping to do these, basically have the anniversary version of the con and then a holiday version of the con. So in June and December until we all get tired of modding. But thanks again to all of you watching. Thanks to anyone not watching who plays the mod. You can pass that along to them if you see them. But especially thank you to the rest of the team that is here today and who haven't been able to be here today. As fun as it is for me to sap all of the credit for everything, nothing would be anywhere near as finished or good as it is if it weren't for every single one of you. So give yourselves a round of applause, but not too loud because that'll fuck with the audio. Okay, do it.
I've pushed to talk on. I can't really do that.
Figure it out.
I'm dabbing. That's my applause.
Oh no. Okay, everyone except for Porto.
Muting Porto right now.
No.
But it is always a pleasure to get to talk to all of you, and I'm so proud of all of you for all the nice things we've done over the years.
That sounds really sarcastic. I don't know why.
I'm trying to be sincere, but I have to make it sound sarcastic. It's the only way I know how to do it. But we got one more cinematic to look at as the stream ends. And then the stream will be up. If you've missed anything earlier on, like poor Black Wolf there, you can go back and watch the whole thing over again. Remember all the good times we've had. But until next time, which I guess is actually in 4.5 hours, if you want to see me and Urshel and Sleverd play some For the King over on twitch.tv/CoreyLoses, that's an option too. But until next time, thank you all once again. Thank you for watching. Thank you for voting. Thank you for playing. And we hope you're all looking forward to what's coming up for all of the EaWX mods, including Ascendancy, which there will be more stuff for that soon too. Bye, everyone.
I love you.
Almost. It needs to actually load the last cinematic. All right, so I have to reopen that. All the production was going so well. It's coming. Don't worry. They still hear me. Now they can still hear you.
Hi.
Difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
I'm trying to think of a pun, but
need to re-download the Duro Space one. Yeah.
Oops.
Okay, if the technical difficulties come in 2.5 hours like that's not bad.
You could say.
Someone cue up the elevator music.
What could we say for? You can't just say you could say and then not finish whatever joke you didn't finish thinking of.
It's what he's been doing for.
No, I know, and he's been getting away with it because he's not been in the
Pavlov's
server.
bell. Yeah, there you go.
No, you can't. You're not doing that anymore. Say it. Say what you could say. We're all waiting.
I'll leave you hanging.
Yeah, we know.
Big
You
boy.
had nothing.
I had something.
You had nothing, and you know you had nothing.
I had something. It just wouldn't make any sense.
That's
okay. I think I have it.
It would really put an eclipse on the event.
So this is the other one.
Took you way too long to come up with.
No, I had it. I said I had it.
This is the one we've seen. And then, just to
don't
make
think
sure.
there's another one.
There's the space one I recorded, but I couldn't get
for
around.
briefing stuff. Remember, we do have the generic field commander units, which have like a normal clone captain commander. So those are always options.
All right, well, never mind. That's it. Nothing else to look at. Bye, everyone.
Fuck off, everyone.